You're a brand new doctor. You're a brand new, captain. This is not an experience you've ever had. What was the first firefight like for you?
Well, the first firefight, we were actually camped out at an airstrip, and we had conducted a sweep in the area a little bit northwest of Saigon. So it was kind of a remote airfield. We got first wind that there could be trouble when there were journalists and photographers that showed up. And they generally only showed up if there was a pretty good chance that we were going to encounter the enemy. And that night, the enemy attacked us. And we came under heavy fire from artillery and small arms fire. And really, the enemy came right up to the wire, and we were able to hold them off. And we were able to survive the night and win the night. But we lost some of our soldiers that night, and we retrieved several of the enemy dead as well. And the unique thing about that for me, I'll never forget, they brought me a soldier who had been hit with shrapnel in the mouth and jaw. And he was really having trouble breathing because it was his teeth and his tongue and everything was lacerated with this artillery fragment, and he just couldn't get air in and out of his lungs. And I had to go ahead and do an operation. It's called a tracheotomy. It's making a little slit in the front portion of the neck and putting an airway tube directly in to the trachea and bypassing the area of the injury. And things were quite intense at that time. And I remember that the only light I had was a flashlight. And the commander of the unit said, "Doc, use the red filter on it because we don't want any bright light here to give away our position to the enemy." So with the medics helping me and a red light, I was able to get this airway tube in, and we were able to evacuate this kid. And I always wondered just what happened to him, but I never got a follow-up. And that was our first encounter with the enemy.
Well, and we're talking to Dr. Samuel Kalush, who was an Army captain, surgeon in Vietnam. We're talking that period of 1967, 68 primarily. Doc, as you mentioned, he was a kid. You were an old man comparatively, right? I mean,
yeah.
These are 19 and 20-year-olds that you are providing medical services for, and somebody who's been through college and into medical school. You got a few years on them. It must have been a sort of a soul-shaking experience to see the carnage among these young kids.
Well, a lot of feelings, a lot of different feelings were going through our minds at that time over this experience. This was something that none of us in the unit had experienced until we got to Vietnam. And I really wasn't that much older than some of these fellows. I was 25 years old at the time. These troopers were 18, 19, 20 years old. And the officers were a bit older than I was. But it was trauma that none of us had ever really seen before. It was the anxiety of not knowing how long this encounter was going to last. It was not knowing how many enemy troops were out there. But you knew that people were trying to kill each other. And, I can remember thinking this is a heck of a way to settle our foreign policy. Just shooting back and forth. But we had a mission. We had a commander. We were a family. It was a small unit. And we knew we had to take care of each other. So you pretty much react according to the training you've had in that kind of situation, and you somehow get through it.
Well, and I suspect you had to rely and did rely heavily on the medics who had even less medical, not less, everybody had less medical training than you, but they had very little medical training from the Vietnam medics I've talked to over time. And that had to be a little bit of a surprise too, in terms of sort of the nature of that support.
Well, I can remember when they flew me in the first day in the field, and I was replacing another battalion surgeon who happened to go to school at Ohio State. Believe it or not, he was a Buckeye.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and I hopped off the helicopter and I asked him if he would stick around for a day or two to orient me, because I said I really don't know anything about this kind of duty or this kind of medicine. I mean, I'm just coming out of an internship. And he looked at me as he put his foot up on the helicopter. He said, "Listen, the medics will teach you everything you know. I'm out of here." So I'll never forget. He got on that helicopter, and I went to the medics, and they did teach me a lot about getting oriented to a war environment.
Well, and again, these are guys who did not have a great deal of training themselves, but a whole lot of heart from everything I've read and talked to, and suspect that was your experience as well.
Yeah, you learn quickly. You learn very, very quickly, but you're right. None of us had that previous experience.
Like what you heard? Listen to this full episode and more on the Apple Podcasts app, Blog Talk Radio, Google Podcasts, or iHeartRadio. And now streaming on Amazon Music, Audible, and Spotify.